darkest alleys to the highest offices, crime has long been a menace of civilization. Motivated by greed, lust, or mere rage, criminals break the laws that bind society together. Apprehended, they can then be tried and sentenced for their transgressions. But what if there was a hidden hand behind their motivations? Stranger yet, what if the perpetrator was not human at all? These are cases of supernatural crimes. The foggy streets of Victorian-era London bustled as the Industrial Revolution marched onward in 1837. The stage was set for the appearance of a figure that would quickly gain infamy across the land, as Mary Stevens would find out as she walked through Clapham Common one October night. Emerging from a dark alley, the figure seized the servant girl in his grasp and began kissing her while rending her clothing with his claws. Her screams caused her attacker to flee, although he would strike again on the following evening when he caused a carriage to crash near the same area. This time, the figure cackled maniacally while bounding over a 9-foot wall to make his escape, leading the press to dub the attacker Spring-Heeled Jack. Though London had been a hotbed of supposed attacks from hostile ghosts, the rise of reports of Spring-Heeled Jack seemed to trigger a wave of panic. Generally, witnesses described him as having eyes that burned like fire, metallic claws on his fingers, a pale complexion with clammy skin, and often emitted blue and white flames from his mouth. He was also said to wear a tight-fitting white oilskin under his cloak, giving the appearance of someone of the upper class. Many reports describe him wearing some kind of helmet on his head. With the Lord Mayor receiving letters claiming women were being maimed, killed, or sometimes driven insane by Spring-Heeled Jack, he wrote it off as an exaggeration, although 2 more notorious attacks would take place the following year. Rumors spread that the attacker could take the form of a ghost, bear, or devil, with sightings reported as far away as the Sussex coast. Several of these were suspected to be copycat pranksters, however, since they varied in their description. Jane Alsop received a knock on her door in the February of 1838 from a man claiming to be an officer having caught Spring-Heeled Jack outside. When she handed the man a candle, he threw back his cloak to reveal his demonic visage and attacked her. He struggled free from his initial grasp and ran screaming for help, only to be caught on the steps of her house, where her neck and arms were injured by her attacker's claws. One of her sisters managed to intervene and cause Spring-Heeled Jack to flee the scene after pounding on the door for several terrifying moments. Over a week later, Lucy Sales was on her way home with her sister when they came upon a tall figure carrying a lantern in an alleyway. When they attempted to pass him, he exhaled blue flames into Lucy's face, which caused her to collapse into convulsions. Afterwards, he calmly walked away as Lucy's sister called for help. Reports of Spring-Heeled Jack would continue throughout the 1800s and into the early years of the 20th century. Throughout England, entities such as the Peckham Ghost or Park Ghost were suspected of being Spring-Heeled Jack under another name. An individual the police claimed was Spring-Heeled Jack was captured in Suffolk in 1842 but escaped custody. In 1877, a soldier at Aldershot's barracks reportedly shot the creature with no effect after it slapped a sentry, while another incident that same year in Newport Arch involved the culprit fleeing an armed mob by making great leaps. The last known sighting took place in Liverpool in 1904, with Spring-Heeled Jack seen leaping across rooftops. The list of those suspected of being the elusive Spring-Heeled Jack during the decades-long crime spree was considerable. Among them, a man named Thomas Millibank tried to claim responsibility for the attack on Jane Alsop, but was found not guilty after admitting he could not breathe fire. Captain Finch from Teignmouth was arrested for the assault of two women while wearing a disguise similar to Spring Heel Jack's appearance. However, the Marquess of Waterford, Henry de la Poer Beresford, remained one of the prime suspects, having a noted hatred for both women and the police, as well as a fondness for pranks and violence. What terrorized London and the surrounding area over the course of the 19th century? Some say the entire affair was nothing more than mass hysteria conjured by a sensationalist press, while others claim it was the work of an all-too-human prankster. Yet still, there remain those that believe Spring-Heel Jack was indeed a demonic, otherworldly being that preyed on the residents of the city. The unremarkable Weidhofen farmstead lay north of Munich, Germany. It was the afternoon of April 4th. The two sons of Lorenz Schlittenbauer, Johann and Josef, arrived to make contact with the resident Gruber family, no one having heard from them in several days. Upon the pair failing to discover anyone, their father investigated the premises with two other men, where they found the bodies of all 5 family members and their chambermaid strewn throughout the barn, as well as the homestead. This was the scene of the Hinterkaifeck Murders. The subsequent police investigation would be hampered after several individuals contaminated the crime scene by moving bodies, tampering with potential evidence, and using the kitchen. A number of people were questioned under the assumption that the killings had been related to a robbery, although the motive seemed to be more like a personal vendetta after a large amount of cash was found on the property. Odd occurrences had taken place at Hinterkaifeck before the attack, with the family's former maid quitting her job 6 months prior after claiming the farmstead was haunted. Andreas Gruber, the family patriarch, had found a newspaper from Munich despite no one in the area having a subscription, as well as a broken lock on the machine room after following tracks that led from the forest. Perhaps most disturbingly, noises could be heard coming from the attic at night, despite it being found empty upon investigation. The murders themselves had been carried out with savage cruelty. Andreas, his wife Casilia, the young mother Victoria, and her daughter Casilia Gabriel had been lured into the barn at night, where they were each killed with blows to the head from a mattock. Afterward, infant Josef would be killed in his crib, and finally the maid, Maria Baumgartner, in her bedroom. Strangely, the murderer did not flee the scene right away, with evidence suggesting they remained on the property for days as they fed the animals and ate food, while the 6 corpses remained where they died. An extensive list of suspects was attached to the killings. Lorenz Schlittenbauer was rumored to be in a relationship with Victoria and had a house key that he used to enter the premises when the first bodies were found, as well as knowledge that only the killer could have supposedly known. In a sickening twist, Josef was found to be the product of incest between Andreas and Victoria. Adolf Gump allegedly killed 9 farmers during a Polish uprising in 1921, and would later have his sister, Presentia Mayer, name him and his brother as the killers on her deathbed. One author even named returning migrant Paul Mueller as a potential culprit, being the sole suspect in the murder of an American family in 1898 under similar circumstances. Mysteriously, 2 figures spotted on the edge of the forest the morning the bodies were found had turned to hide their faces upon being noticed, while the stranger questioning a Hinterkaifeck resident about the killings years later yelled that he himself was the murderer before fleeing into the woods. The farmstead was demolished a year after the murders, revealing the mattock used to kill the family in the attic and a penknife in the barn. This, along with so much time having passed, make it unlikely the Hinterkaifeck murders will ever be solved. Was the Gruber family slain by a vengeful madman, or did something more insidious in the form of a malicious spirit take their lives? The Jamisons were a young family living in Eufaula, Oklahoma, in the year 2009, consisting of Father Bobby, his wife Sherry Lynn, and their 6-year-old daughter Madison. The couple had recently made the curious decision to move into a storage container on some property they had been looking to purchase. October 8th of that year would be the last time they would be seen alive. 8 days would pass before their abandoned truck was discovered in a remote area with their wallets, phones, starving pet dog, and, most strangely, a bank bag of $32,000 in cash inside. Both Bobby and Sherry Lynn were unemployed and drawing disability at the time. With no sign of violence, investigators concluded that they had stopped here to meet someone before leaving with them. The truck's GPS indicated that it had been originally up a nearby hill, where a search party would take place the following day after footprints were discovered. Unfortunately, this would prove to be fruitless. Several years would pass until deer hunters in the Sans Bois Mountains stumbled upon human remains on November 16, 2013, less than 3 miles away from where the truck was found. Although the bones and clothing remnants were badly deteriorated, they were confirmed as belonging to the Jamisons. However, due to exposure to scavengers and the elements, the cause of death could not be determined. A handgun registered to Sherry Lynn was never recovered, as well as a briefcase with unknown contents. It is worth noting that there was a small hole in the back of Bobby's skull, but it was not confirmed to be from a bullet. The tragedy that befell the Jamison family had been strange enough, but the events preceding it were truly bizarre. Bobby and Sherry Lynn had been convinced their home in Eufaula was haunted by several ghosts, and Bobby even went as far as to visit his local priest to obtain special bullets in order to deal with them, and had admitted to reading a satanic Bible. A security camera recording from their home showed the couple packing their vehicle in a trance-like state, sometimes pausing to simply stare blankly ahead. Additionally, the grammatically incorrect phrase, 3 cats killed to date by people in this area, witches don't like their black cat killed, had been scrawled on the storage container that they had been planning to live in. Likely by Sherry Lynn, since she had suspected her neighbors of poisoning her cats. Though murder-suicide had not been completely ruled out, the list of possible suspects was also unusual. Bobby's father, Bob Dean Jamison, had threatened to kill the family in the past, causing Bobby to file a protective order against him and described him as a very dangerous man. Bob Dean was in poor health at the time and passed away soon after, leading many to believe he would have been unable to carry out the crime. Sherry Lynn's mother, Connie Kokatan, insisted the family had been targeted by one of the racial cults operating in the region, a notion supported by the discovery of occult literature in the Jamison home, as well as the strange message left on the storage container. In fact, a man named Kenneth Bellows that had been renting on their property had been forced to leave at gunpoint by Sherry Lynn after a racially charged dispute, although he was behind bars at the time of their disappearance. Lastly, a possible involvement with the drug trade was believed to explain the mysterious bag of money in their truck, as well as their erratic behavior prior to their disappearance. However, no drug paraphernalia was ever recovered from among their possessions. The Jamison family case stands out in the field of unsolved crimes. Its mix of horrifying loss, unexplained events, and paranormal undertones make it a captivating, if unsettling, occurrence to study. If anything, what happened to the Jamison family demonstrates that the human element behind a crime can be as shocking as any supernatural involvement. In a world where ordinary crimes often go unpunished, crimes involving the supernatural should receive special consideration. After all, it may be difficult to handcuff a ghost.